Parenting has never been a walk in the park, but raising kids today feels like walking through a hall of funhouse mirrors because everything's distorted. Up is down, wrong is right, truth is whatever someone feels. It's insanity. And we live in what commentators are dubbing a post-truth era, defined by circumstances where objective facts matter less than emotional appeals and personal beliefs. In practical terms, that means our kids are growing up in a culture that often shrugs at facts and says, make your own truth. And for a parent trying to install values and critical thinking, this is terrifying. I mean, how do you guide children when even basic truths from biology to morality are disputed? How do you keep them grounded when the cultural ground itself is constantly shifting? Think about the daily barrage of confusion a modern kid will face. I mean, in school, they might be taught that gender is as changeable as your socks and that parents have no say in deeply personal matters. On their smartphones, which many kids wield as expansions of their hands, they're bombarded with addictive apps and influencers that are shaping their worldview in who knows what direction. Traditional pillars of guidance like church or community values, often absent. It's as if the moral compass we relied on has been demagnetized and it's just spinning aimlessly. And many young parents in their 20s and 30s look around bewildered saying, we have no idea what the heck is happening and we don't want to accidentally screw up our kids. See, in today's episode, we're going to be tackling parenting in a post-truth world head on. We're going to critique cultural chaos that's making modern parenting feel like a minefield. And we're also going to look at practical playbooks for moms and dads who want to raise healthy, grounded kids amid the madness. We'll explore the big pain points from gender ideology in schools and digital addiction to the loss of moral frameworks and the decline of religious influence that once helped shape American values. And along the way, we'll pull in insights from experts and past guests. Remember our good buddy there, John England, of course, and real data of what's actually going on in our world. So my goal is by the end, you should feel not only validated in your concerns, but also empowered with the tools and strategies to navigate this wild world as a parent. Buckle up. I'm going to be frank, deep, and hopefully this is enlightening as we dig through this discussion on how we can best protect and prepare our children for when truth seems to be up for grabs. So one of the most jarring challenges in what's happening today is in schools. And the classroom used to be about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but lately those basics are getting submerged under a tsunami of cultural Marxism. Or to put it less dramatically, traditional academics are taking a back seat to radical social agendas. A prime example is the surge of gender ideology being introduced at younger and younger ages. And we're not talking about simple lessons in tolerance and kindness. This goes way beyond being nice to folks. In some school districts, kids as young as kindergarten are hearing that their gender is fluid and that they can change it on a whim, sometimes even being asked what pronouns they want to go for before they've even mastered tying their shoes. And many parents have been alarmed to discover lessons and policies happening behind their backs. In fact, in at least 6,000 public schools across the U.S., children have been encouraged toward gender transitions, both socially and even medically, without parental knowledge or consent. Let that sink in. Thousands of schools think it's okay to help a child assume a new gender identity, call them a new name, and even refer them for puberty blockers or hormones, and then deliberately keep it a secret from parents? If this sounds like a dystopian novel, I'm sorry, folks. It's not. This is reality. In many places, when parents have found out and objected, school officials have basically said, sorry, you're just ignorant. We know better than you. It's nuts. In one case, after parents in Massachusetts sued to stop a school from secretly transitioning their kids, the superintendent blasted them for intolerance veiled behind parental rights. Unbelievable. Schools are literally telling parents that their parental rights and values don't count if they clash with the new gender doctrines. And is it any wonder we're seeing an explosion in children who are identifying as transgender? Some reports say that roughly 300,000 kids between the ages of 13 and 17 now identify as transgender, and that's in the United States alone. And that's a number that's risen sharply in just the past few years. And medical interventions have spiked too. There was nearly a 5-fold increase in gender transition surgeries for teens from 2016 to 2020. Folks, this isn't happening in a vacuum. When kids are barraged with that message that changing gender is cool or trendy or even necessary, well, and especially when schools facilitate it without the tempering influence of parents, you get a trend. We had John England on the show previously, and he put it quite plainly. Kids are impressionable, and if you bombard them with one-sided ideology, they often don't have the maturity to question it. So John urged that children need structure and truth, not confusion masquerading as freedom. And he reminded us that many phases that kids go through are just that, phases. And it's a parent's job to lovingly guide them through, not let institutions make life-altering decisions for them. And from a cultural critique standpoint, this gender indoctrination, it represents a post-truth mentality at its worst. It asks children to reject observable reality, their biological sex, in favor of subjective feelings, and it sidelines parents who might dare to say, hold on, let's talk this through. And as parents, it's infuriating and heartbreaking in equal measure. Our practical advice, get informed and get involved. Don't assume your child's school is immune to this trend, regardless if you live in a red area. Attend school board meetings, review the curriculum, and ask your kids, hey, what are you learning? Teach your children at home about your family's values on sex and identity before some stranger does. Explain with compassion that stereotypes don't define them. A girl can be a tomboy and still 100% a girl. And that biology isn't bigotry. It's just reality. Some parents are even opting for alternatives like charter schools, homeschooling, private schools, and so forth if their public school won't respect boundaries. Above all, folks, maintain open communication with your kids. Remember, you want to be the safe place they come to with questions about these issues, not some online forum or activist teacher. See, this is one front where leaving children alone in terms of not inundating them with gender theory is actually the best policy. Let kids be kids and let puberty and exploration happen naturally, but of course under parental guidance. And by the way, if gender ideology is one monster under the bed, digital addiction is another. And this is one thing that's hiding in plain sight, often actually in your kids' beds right now. Think about it. How many kids sleep with a smartphone glowing under the covers? We're raising kids in the glare of screens, tablets, phones, gaming consoles. These can be amazing tools and sources of entertainment, but they're also highly engineered for addiction. Silicon Valley isn't shy about it. Apps and games were entirely designed to hook users, exploiting the brain's reward circuits, much like a drug. And guess whose brains are most vulnerable to getting hooked? Yeah, our kids, whose self-control and judgment centers, the prefrontal cortex, are still developing. And the data is sobering. A meta-analysis found about 1 in 4 adolescents, which is around 26%, worldwide show signs of internet addiction. The American Medical Association estimates up to 15% of US teens may be digital addicts, unable to control their screen use. See, these are not just kids who love TikTok a little too much. We're talking about serious dependency. Kids who get anxious, angry, or despondent when separated from their devices, who can't get through dinner or a simple car ride without scrolling, who literally experience withdrawal symptoms if Wi-Fi goes down. See, many teens are online almost constantly. There was a 2023 Pew survey that found 46% of teens said they are, quote, almost always online. And the more time on screens, generally the worse their reported mental health. The CDC found teens with 4+ hours of daily screen time had significantly higher rates of both anxiety and depression symptoms compared to those with less screen time. This isn't just correlation. Excessive digital stimulation causes real harm. Several studies link heavy screen use in kids to inattention, poorer memory, and lower academic performance. And socially, kids glued to devices may struggle with face-to-face interaction and empathy. Physically, we see problems from poor sleep, think blue light and late-night TikTok binges robbing them from rest, to raising childhood obesity rates. Think of hours sitting with snacks and iPads. And perhaps most alarming, brain imaging studies show that chronic digital addiction impacts the developing brain, especially the areas responsible for impulse control and emotional regulation. So in other words, too much Minecraft or Instagram can literally rewire your kid's brain, and not in a good way. No parent in their right mind wants their 12-year-old's neural pathways to resemble those of a gambling addict. But here we are. That's essentially what constant dopamine hits from social media and video games can do. So how do we push back? Well, culturally, we need to call this what it is. It's a new drug threatening our kids. And we've normalized it because, kids these days, always on their phones. Ha, ha, ha. But we shouldn't. And I've ranted in previous episodes. We'd never hand our kids a whiskey bottle or a pack of cigarettes, yet we do casually hand them smartphones loaded with apps that are just as, if not more addictive. The practical playbook here for parents is all about drawing boundaries and modeling behavior. So here are some tips. First, delay devices. There's been a big movement called Wait Until 8th Grade, encouraging parents to hold off on giving smartphones until kids are at least 13 to 14 years old. Now, no, not every family can wait that long. I get that. But the principle here is sound. The later they start social media, the better for their brain and self-esteem. Also, set screen limits. So this might mean no phones after 8 p.m., no devices in the bedroom overnight, or a rule like, hey, for every hour on the screen, an hour of non-screen activity. Use parental controls and actually enforce them. All in the family, make it a household norm that screens go off at dinner, during family time, etc., whenever you're all together. And kids notice if we're glued to our phones. So we have to walk the walk. So yes, that means us parents might need a detox too. Yeah, tough, I know. Also encourage offline joy. Fill their time with sports or hobbies, outdoor play, reading actual books, experiences that release those feel-good brain chemicals in healthy ways. A kid busy shooting hoops or playing guitar is not doom scrolling on Reddit. And how about tech transparency? Teach kids why you're limiting screens. Share age-appropriate info about how too much social media can actually lead to anxiety or how gaming companies are trying to get them hooked. When kids understand the reason, they're more likely to cooperate. One doctor at the World Health Organization put it simply, we want our youth to rule social media, not have social media rule them. Meaning we aim to raise masters, not slaves of technology. Bottom line, we have to be the mean parents sometimes and say no to the endless screen time sugar. It's not easy too, I get it. Tantrums will happen, but all my friends have TikTok arguments will stay and will be screamed. But hold strong, because protecting their developing minds is worth being the bad guy. Better a bored kid than a brain-fried one. And in this post-truth digital Wild West, we parents must guard the frontier. Now picture this. Your kid comes home from school and says, Mom, our class talked about how everyone has their own truth, and what's right for you might not be right for someone else. Okay, on one hand, it's great. Let's respect differences. But on the other, if right and wrong become completely subjective, how is a child supposed to learn integrity or courage or honor or morals? See, one disturbing aspect of this post-truth world is a pervasive moral relativism. The idea that there are no absolute standards anymore, just personal preferences. And we see this everywhere in culture. Values that were once almost universally upheld, like honesty, hard work, meritocracy, respect, now feel optional. If you're a new parent, you already know the feeling. Running on maybe 3 hours of sleep, chasing your kid before the coffee kicks in, it's like you're constantly in survival mode. And even if you do find time to eat clean or sneak in a workout, your body's just not operating at full speed. Stress, sleepless nights, and poor nutrition tank your nitric oxide levels, leaving you sluggish, foggy, and unfortunately snapping at the people you love the most. And trust me, I've been there. That's why I started using Cardio Miracle. That's a clean nitric oxide blend that supports energy, circulation, and mood with no caffeine crashes or stimulants. Just ingredients like organic beetroot, CoQ10, and L-arginine that naturally help you stay present, productive, and powered through parenthood. Trust me, this stuff helps you show up for your family. So, scan the little QR code over my shoulder, click the link in the show notes, or simply head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to give it a try. And by the way, when you go to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS, you're going to get a discount automatically applied at checkout. Just look for the little note saying you're shopping with Brian Nichols at the Cardio Miracle homepage. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show. Discipline and accountability are often cast as mean or shaming. And then schools tiptoe around ethical topics, afraid to offend. And what's the result? Well, a lot of young people are growing up unmoored with a very shaky sense of right and wrong. In fact, there was a recent survey that showed 55% of American adults say that whether something is morally right or wrong, quote, depends on the situation. And only 44% think there are clear, absolute standards. The majority also believes you don't need God or religion to be moral. And don't worry, we're going to get to the religion part in a second. But the message filtering down to kids is figure it out yourself. Do what feels right to you. See, that might sound freeing, but for a kid, it's often more paralyzing. It's like telling them to navigate a sea with no compass. Find your own North Star, kiddo. One of our past guests, again, John England once again, he spoke passionately about this. And he noted that many parents, in an attempt to be modern and non-imposing, have swung to the extreme of giving kids no moral frameworks at all. And think about John's words. They still echo. If you don't teach your kids values, someone else or something else will. Looking at you, TikTok. And often, someone else doesn't have your child's best interests at heart. In past episodes, we've highlighted the epidemic of parents afraid to correct or guide their kids. They let little Johnny and little Susie choose for themselves on everything, thinking it'll make them open-minded. Yeah, so open-minded that their brains fall out. But uncorrected kids often end up entitled, anxious, and easily swayed by peer pressure or the latest social media craze. The world's moral relativism will prey on a child who hasn't been given a solid backbone. They'll drift with the tide of least resistance, which is rarely a good place. So the cultural critique is, well, in trying to be non-judgmental, our society has left a void where moral education used to be. But nature abhors a vacuum. Into that void floods everything from consumerist values, you are what you buy, to toxic online subcultures that glorify the wrong things. Folks, kids need a moral compass. They actually crave it, even if they protest rules and limits, because it gives them security and guidance. As parents, we have to step up to provide it, both lovingly and firmly. So some practical advice for instilling a moral framework is, well, first, be explicit about right and wrong in everyday life. Talk about ethics at the dinner table. And it could be as simple as, hey, Tommy found a wallet at school today and turned it in. And that was the right thing to do because honesty matters. Use stories, use current events. Heck, use your own life lessons. Second, model the behavior. If we lie or curse people out in traffic or cheat on our tests, guess what? Our kids notice. And lesson learned. Unfortunately, the wrong one. Third, set boundaries, and enforce consequences. If your kid lies or breaks a promise, gently but clearly correct them, make a suitable consequence, but also an explanation of why honesty is important. Don't just shrug off bad behavior as, kids will be kids. They will rise or sink to the expectations that we set. And by the way, it's also worth teaching kids about thinking critically, especially in a post-truth world of propaganda and spin. An ethical thinker asks, is this true? Is this right? So encourage your child to reflect, how would you feel if someone did that to you? See, this builds empathy, which is the bedrock of morality. And whether or not you bring religion into it, I think you should. Focus on core values. Kindness, fairness, courage to stand up for what's right, even when others won't. Respect for yourself and for others. Responsibility for mistakes. Making amends. See, these are timeless principles. A child armed with them will be far less likely to be blown off course by the latest fads of moral relativism. See, they'll have an inner voice that says, I know what's right, even if it's hard, and I'll choose that. That little inner voice is gold, so nurture it. And by the way, speaking of moral compasses, for generations in America, a primary way that families instilled values was through religion, specifically Christianity. And whether or not everyone was devout, there was a shared cultural script. The golden rule, the 10 commandments, the idea that we're all accountable to something higher. Church on Sundays, prayer before meals, Christmas and Easter. These rituals provided structure and community, a sense that certain things were just right and wrong. Now, we're witnessing a steep decline in religious upbringing, and it's deeply intertwined with the lack of a moral framework that we just discussed. And let's look at the numbers. A national survey by the American Enterprise Institute found that millennial parents, millennials born between 1981 and 1996, are far less likely to be raising their kids with religion compared to older generations. Only 42% of surveyed parents under 40 said they regularly take their children to religious services. And just 38% send their kids to any kind of Sunday school or religious education. Now contrast that with the baby boomers, which we have issues with the baby boomers, but think about this. 65% of parents who are now age 65 plus said that they did send their kids to Sunday school or something equivalent. And that is a huge generational drop. Even worse, 53% of young adults today believe that it's, quote, not necessary to raise kids in a religious community for them to learn good values. Whereas over 75% of boomers say religious upbringing is vital to instill morals. See, this is a sea change in mindset. America is quite rapidly shifting from bring the kids to church, it's important, to let them decide when they're older. We'll just teach them to be good people without church. And I get it. I understand where some of that comes from because many millennials themselves have drifted from religion or they never had it in the first place. And they think, hey, I turned out okay, so they figure that my kids will too. There's a desire not to force beliefs on kids. And I've heard the phrase, I'll let them choose their path from a number of my peers. And yes, it's true that one can grow up to be moral without formal religion. And studies show that secular families can raise ethical kids. But here's the reality. Are we actually doing that successfully in practice? Or has tossing out religion also meant tossing out a coherent moral narrative for almost all families? I'm going to guess it's the latter. See, the old church-centric model wasn't perfect, and we can all cite hypocrisy and flaws, but at least it gave parents a toolkit and a community for moral socialization. And now, a lot of parents are essentially reinventing the wheel alone, trying to impart values with nothing to back them up beyond, well, because I said so, or some vague appeals to being nice. And kids notice when the grown-ups themselves aren't sure why something is right or wrong. Historically, Christian values have heavily shaped American societies. Notions of inherent rights, human dignity, charity, justice, personal responsibility, they all have roots in a biblical worldview. The idea wasn't that everyone must be devout, but that the moral ecology was nourished by a Christian ethos. As that influence wanes, we're seeing confusion fill the gap. For instance, we now argue over fundamentals like, what is a man? What is a woman? What is marriage? When does life begin? Questions that religions used to answer in very clear ways. Even if you disagreed, you knew the standard answers. The post-truth mentality extends here. If there's no grounded truth from faith or tradition, then all these definitions become subjective and politically charged. Society becomes a free-for-all of competing truths, and children are caught in the crossfire. Now, I'm not here to preach that every listener must convert or take their kids to church next Sunday, though I bet many of you already do, but consider the evidence for the benefits of a religious upbringing. There was a comprehensive study by Harvard of over 5,000 youths over 8 years, and it found that kids raised with regular religious practices were statistically much less likely to engage in dangerous behaviors, and they had better overall life outcomes. Specifically, teens who attended religious services were about 12% less likely to suffer from depression and 33% less likely to use illicit drugs. And those who prayed or meditated frequently were 30 to 40% less likely to start having sex young or contract STIs. See, these religiously raised kids were more likely to report being happy, to volunteer, to have a strong sense of purpose. And that's huge. It's like religion provided an immunization against some of the big teen pitfalls like depression, drugs, risky sex, and boosted some of the best outcomes: joy, generosity, purpose. Harvard's researchers concluded that the evidence for the positive effects of religious upbringing is, quote, quite strong. In other words, it works for many families. And beyond studies, there's common sense. Being part of a faith community gives parents and kids a support network. It gives them shared values, mentorship from other adults, and of course, regular reinforcement of moral lessons. One sociologist noted that religious communities function as a village, helping raise kids, offering parents information, sharing emotional support, and practical help, things sorely needed in our isolated, busy modern lives. Unfortunately, many have thrown the baby out with the baptismal water, so to speak. And yes, there are reasons people left churches: scandals, rigidity, changing values and beliefs. But now we have generations of kids growing up with no exposure to faith, period, and often no alternative moral framework filling the void. The result? A lot of young folks feeling unanchored, battling extreme anxiety, lacking meaning. It's telling that teen mental health issues are skyrocketing at the same time that youth involvement in religious and spiritual alternatives has plummeted. Coincidence? I think not. As one of our earlier episodes put it, America built the house on Christian values. And if you remove that foundation and the house starts to wobble, yeah, we're going to start seeing the wobble. So what can parents do regarding the loss of religion? Well, if you're a person of faith, this is your cue. Step up. Don't shy away from involving your kids in religious practice. Even if it's countercultural, stick with it. Those traditions and teachings might be the very thing that ground your child when everything else spins. Share not just the rules of your faith, but the why, the love, the justice, the hope that it brings. And if you're not religious, no one's saying go fake it. But you can still provide structure and exposure to the concept of something greater. Maybe it's teaching universal principles that religions share, like gratitude or treating others the way you want to be treated, forgiveness. Maybe it's connecting with your kids' relatives or friends who have strong value systems, or reading children's books that impart moral lessons. You might even explore something like community service as a quasi-spiritual teacher, showing kids that fulfillment of helping others can instill a sense of purpose beyond material success. See, the key is not to let kids grow up in a moral vacuum. And unfortunately, many secular parents do just that. But then some do a fantastic job of this. They intentionally talk about values and even borrow wisdom from various faiths or philosophies. The data shows you can raise good kids without organized religion, but it's harder work to do it. Running a small business means adapting on the fly, hiring, scaling down, shifting teams based on seasonal projects. But most phone systems, they lock you into a set number of users and then make it a pain to adjust. And on the contrary, that's where Level 365 shines. Add or remove users anytime. Month-to-month plans, scale up when you need it, scale down when you don't. It's flexibility that actually matches how your business works. No headaches, no overpaying for empty seats. Just phones that move with you, and that is what makes Level 365 different. So build some form of values community around your family, whether that's a family trip, a scouting troop, a cultural tradition, something that is consistently reinforcing the virtues and values that you care about. And let's be real, if you're a parent who's drifted from your own faith, but deep down worry something's missing, it's never too late to revisit. Even if you don't return to church, you might recall the stories or the morals you learned and share those. There's a reason fables and religious parables have lasted millennia, because they speak to core human truths. Depriving our kids of that treasury of wisdom because, well, we're modern now, might be doing them, it is doing them a disservice. As one past guest bluntly said on a prior episode, quote, "Not giving your child any spiritual moral grounding is a bit like denying them vegetables. Sure, they might survive on candy and chips, or whatever culture feeds them, but they won't thrive." And I know today's episode has been deep. We've covered a lot today. Ideological battles in the classroom, the lure of digital dopamine hits, the erosion of clear values, and of course, the retreat of religion. And it can feel overwhelming, like, great, the world's on fire, Brian, and I'm supposed to keep my kid from getting burned? How? Well, take a deep breath. The good news is that you are not powerless. Far from it. In fact, parents have more influence than all of those cultural forces combined if we choose to use it. So to wrap up here, what we're going to do is go through and map out a playbook of practical strategies, a little more how-to complement the critiques. First, stay connected. Above all, maintain a strong parent-child connection. Talk with your kids daily, not just at them. Listen to their concerns about school, friends, the internet, because when they trust you as their confidant, you'll be the first to know when something's off, whether it's a weird lesson at school or cyberbullying on their phone. That connection is your early warning system and your lifelong bond. Second, establish family values. Sit down as a family and actually spell out what your core family values are. And it could be as simple as a list stuck in the fridge of our family values: honesty, kindness, courage, respect, and faith. But refer to it whenever there are teaching moments arising. Hey, in this family, we tell the truth, even when it's hard, because that's honesty. A clear set of values give kids a solid framework in a very squishy world. Third, be the media mentor. Completely shielding kids from a digital world is unrealistic, and we get that. But you can mentor them through it. Co-watch shows or YouTube together and discuss messages. Teach them to fact-check things that sound dubious online. Encourage them to ask, who made this content and what might their goal be? This builds critical thinking. If they see an influencer doing something crazy for likes, chat about it. Hey, do you think that's real or staged? And how does that align with our values? Turn media consumption into interactive, thoughtful activities, not passive soak up anything sessions. Fourth, choose your battles, but battle the big ones. Folks, you can't fight every single cultural influence, or you're going to be exhausted even more than you would just normally. And by the way, your kids will tune you out. Decide what hills you're willing to die on. Gender pronouns at school? That might be a good hill to die on. The new violent video games that all of his friends play? Perhaps you hold the line and say no, despite the whining. But by contrast, hair dye, funky fashions, probably not worth a war, because that's self-expression that doesn't harm their character. But it's up to you. Just at the end of the day, prioritize the issues that impact your child's health, their character, and faith, and just be more flexible on benign trends. This way, when you do put your foot down, they know you're serious. 5th, build a like-minded village. Don't do this alone, folks. Find other parents who share your values and sanity. And by the way, understand you're not alone. Form a support network, whether through a church, a parenting group, or just that one other mom and dad who gets it. Coordinate on things like device rules, because it's easier to say no to a phone at 10 if 3 of their best friends also don't have one yet. Back each other up when schools or communities challenge your rights, because there's power in numbers if you have to attend a school board meeting and start a petition. A community of like-minded parents can also provide your kids with friends who are being raised similarly, which normalizes your family standards in their eyes. And we've often said this on the show before. If you can't find a village, be the one who starts building it. 6, stay informed, not panicked. Knowledge is your friend. Keep up with what's going on in youth culture. Yes, that might even mean occasionally browsing the apps they use or reading up on the latest teen slang or trend. 6, 7? What? Read some news about educational policies, technology, and teen health. Being informed helps you anticipate issues and have factual talks. And it lets you cite real sources. You've heard how I love citing sources, but don't let the bad news consume you. Use information as a tool, not a fear trigger. Remember, sensational headlines aren't the whole story. There are lots of great teachers out there, lots of healthy online communities, and lots of wonderful young people making good choices. So balance awareness with optimism. 7th, model resilience and faith. Our kids learn how to react to the world by watching us. So if we're constantly anxious, angry, or despairing about society, they're going to absorb that or they're going to rebel against it. I have to remind myself that. Show them hope. Emphasize the positives. Hey, we're doing our best, and there are good people fighting the good fight. Demonstrate how you cope with a crazy world, maybe through prayer or journaling or activism, and let them see you stand up for what's right with courage and kindness. If you volunteer, bring them along. If you make a mistake, own it and apologize, and that teaches them integrity. If you have faith, live it out authentically and in front of them. A parent who practices what they preach, imperfectly but sincerely, gives a child a blueprint for living with conviction amidst chaos. See, this playbook isn't exhaustive, I know that, but it's a starting point. The thread running through it is intentionality. Post-truth culture is loud and pushy, and we parents have to be louder in our love and leadership, not in volume, but in presence and consistency. No one will care about your child's well-being and character more than you. So trust that instinct and don't be afraid to swim upstream. All right, folks, as we wrap up today's deep dive into parenting in a post-truth world, let's just take a quick moment and just reflect. Because it's easy to feel discouraged after hearing about all the forces we're fighting against. And I get it. Ideology run amok in schools, tech temptations, hijacking their brains, moral anchors pulled up, faith traditions fading. It's scary. But remember this. Every generation of parents has faced its monsters. Ours might wear new masks, looking at you, smartphones and TikTok trends, and certain school boards, but the fundamental task remains the same. We are here to protect, love, and guide our kids into becoming good, capable adults. And that mission is timeless. Yes, the post-truth era throws some curveballs that our grandparents never could have imagined. I'm pretty sure my grandpa didn't have to navigate conversations about why an 11-year-old classmate is trying to change pronouns, but I digress. But human wisdom is also cumulative. We have the benefit of learning from those before us. We know that strong values, caring involvement, and a little bit of tough love can go a very long way. We know that kids actually want boundaries, even as they test them. And we know that truth exists, no matter how unfashionable it may be to say so. And that as parents, we have both the right and the duty to teach that truth to our kids. America may have been built on Christian morals and a shared ethos, and while that foundation has cracked in places, we can repair it brick by brick in our own homes. In a culture that often calls black, white, and up, down, be your family's North Star. Your mom, dad, whoever you are the first and most important teacher your child will ever have. Your voice can cut through the noise. Your home can become the sanctuary of sanity and love amidst a chaotic world. Don't underestimate how much influence you truly have. Study after study shows parents, even of teens who grumble, I know, shocking, they remain the number one influence on their kids' lives, on their kids' values, and on their kids' decisions. The post-truth culture, they want to erode that. But it can't unless we let it. And we've also seen that we're not alone in these concerns. Many parents are waking up and pushing back, from legal battles asserting parental rights and education to grassroots movements promoting safer tech for kids. There's a growing awareness that something's off and a desire to course correct. And that gives me hope. When enough of us stand up and say, no, I won't surrender my kid's mind and soul to the zeitgeist, real change happens. Schools can be reformed or replaced. Tech can be moderated. Communities can revive value-based activities. It starts at home, but we can ripple forward. And one thing I want to stress in closing is the importance of grace for your kids, but also for you. No parent does this perfectly. I certainly haven't. You've heard my stories of dad fails and learning curves, and you might listen to all this and think, I've already got way too much on my plate. And I'm sorry, I let my kids already have too much screen time. Or, hey, Brian, I haven't been to church in years, decades. Is it too late? Or my teen has absorbed ideas I oppose, and we argue constantly. Don't despair. Kids are resilient and remarkably open to change when approached with honesty and love. It's never too late to implement new boundaries or have a heart-to-heart talk. You can even share some of your concerns with your kids in an age-appropriate way. Hey, I realize I haven't really talked much about our family values, but I'd like to because I care about the kind of person you're becoming. They might roll their eyes at first, but I guarantee it will sink in. And forgive yourself for past mistakes. Parenting is a journey of continual adjustment. And the fact that you care enough to worry and to work on it means that you're already miles ahead of the whatever I give up crowd. To navigate a post-truth world, maybe the secret is this. Hold on to the real truths tighter than ever. The truth that your child is a precious individual with inherent dignity. The truth that right and wrong do exist. The truth that kindness, honesty, and courage, they matter. The truth that love, most especially a parent's love, is stronger than hate and confusion. And if you're a person of faith, the truth that God is still in control even when society seems upside down and backwards. These truths don't change, even when everything else seems to. So teach them, live them, and your child will have a rock-solid foundation to stand on. In a world of shallow fads and cynical lies, be the beacon of light for your kid. They might not thank you today. Oh, Dad, you're so strict. None of my friends' parents care about this stuff. Sound familiar? But one day, I promise, they will look back and realize that you gave them the greatest gift of all. The ability to see truth from falsehood, the courage to choose the good over the convenient. And that, my friends, is how we raise strong kids who can not only survive, but thrive in a post-truth world. And who knows? Maybe the generation we're raising will be the one to swing that pendulum back towards sanity. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation right there. With that being said, if you got some value from today's episode, do me a favor. Go ahead and give it a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me on X, Facebook, or Instagram. As for the Brian Nichols Show, we are both a video and a podcast form of the show. So if you like to watch your favorite shows, head over to your favorite video app like YouTube, Rumble, wherever it is you consume your video content. All I ask is hit that subscribe button and, of course, the little notification bell, because we have a brand new episode live stream every Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Or if you like to take your podcast on the go, head to your favorite podcast addict like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever it is you consume your podcast content. Search for The Brian Nichols Show, hit subscribe, and by the way, we have over 1,000 past episodes, which I guarantee will leave you educated, enlightened, and informed. And one final ask, if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to support the show, support us by supporting the folks who do support us, and that is our phenomenal sponsors like Cardio Miracle. Head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS, or simply scan that little QR code over my shoulder. Either way, you'll see a little note saying you're shopping with Brian Nichols. And with that being said, folks, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. This is Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.